HaMitzvah Pezayin, HaMitzvah Sheva U'Shmonim, Hi Shetzivonu Lihiyois Hatur Kodesh. This Lihiyois in the original Arabic, it's bikon, and I think I discussed this once, that the word bikon is a very interesting word which the Ram doesn't use very often. And the literal translation is to be in the state of. Liois b'matziv shel, in the state of. The mitzvah is liois, to be noyeg with the tmuras behema as a behemas kodesh. Chetzivonu liois hatmur kodesh. The pasuk says lo yachzifenu v'lo yomir oisoi. There's a law of tmura, of tmuras behema kodesh. There shouldn't be machlif or meimir, whatever those two things mean. That behema schul, you shouldn't say in mischulin, that it should be kodesh in the place of the behemas kodesh. This is Vayikol Chav Zayin Posek Yud. And the Aseh is learned from the end of the Posek. V'hoya hu usmulaso yeh kodesh. So a priori, you could have said, B'chlal, there's no mitzvah over here. It's just that the Torah was geyser that it should be kodesh, but there's no mitzvah at all. So the truth is, the Torah was geyser it should be kodesh, but the Rambam is phrasing the mitzvah. If it's a bikon, it's to be noyeg with the behema that you wanted to be that you wanted to be meimir on, to make it that to be noyeg with that behema, the behema which was originally chulin, to be noyeg with it as if it as it is kodesh. And that's a chiddush. It's only a result of the aveira. The Torah clams down that the tmura happens to be kodesh. It's a kilu. If he violates the law, the Torah is geyser. What he does, he obed lo machani. V'hoya hu smosa yeh kodesh. But there's no mitzvah say. So therefore, the Rambam has to, and the Rambam says, "V'hu amro yis'aleh, v'hoyehu usmosa yeh kodesh." But that's not enough. Ubebeyer amru, and the Matiki Ashmur said explicitly to explain, "B'reish Meseches Tmura" means that the beginning of Meseches Tmura. Or betchil, according to, and that in even Ayev and even in Kapach, it's betchilas Meseches Tmura, which is a lot more readable. Betchilas Meseches Tmura, Dalet on the base. Ki omroi yis'ale lo yimirenu, ki mitzvos lo yisaseh. Shenitak la Aseh. So what's the Rambam saying? He's not trying to tell us whether you get mal, because he doesn't even say you're not like it. That's not the issue. When Chazal say the Loshen that it's a lav hanitak laseh, that it's a nitak laseh, it's only nitak laseh if there is a mitzvah aseh. It's not stam that you're supposed to do something. And since it says that it's nitak laseh, It's the charaya that the mitzvah said. Let's just read and then we'll go over each word by it and we'll see. V'omru. And the Matiki Ashmur said, Harimema the lab anita glasehu. And that's the proof. He mitzvahs loisa shedik glaseh. V'omru, kilu, because they said, Harimema the lab anita glasehu. V'shom nemar gam kein betam heyois hamema loiker shuhu lab anit glaseh. It's the lab anit glaseh. So why should he be loiker? So they said that even though it is a lab anit glaseh and there is an aseh, amu loy osi aseh. The oka trelav lavendik laseh is only like only menatik one I say one lav, not two lav. We'll see that. Klema shaschos mitmua nichpeles pamayim. It said twice. Lechaver v'yomir ubo aseh echod v'hu v'hoyehu smosi yekodesh is only one I say, and the two lavim. So that's why you get Malchus. But it remains, it's not a Raya doch that it's not a Lavin, because it is a Lavin Glaseh, but it's not Menatik to Lavin. So since it's a Nita Glaseh, there is an Aseh over here, there's a Raya that this state of Behoya who Smosia Kodesh is a mitzvah say to be noyeg with the Tmura as it is Kodesh. Ukfa Izbaru. Dine mitzvah zo, meseches tmur, kloima, eich tiskayim, v'eich loy tiskayim, uma dino, v'eich tikorev. In other words, meseches tmura is telling you all the dinim of this tmur, which in noeg, that it's kodesh. What tmur is nikrav, what tmur is not nikrav. What tmur is, how it is kodesh, what's kodesh. Now, let's go slowly. So since a priori again, you never would have said that there's a mitzvah say over here, you would have said, V'hoyu small so kodesh is a knas hatera for violating the law. Kach goes l'tera. And then the kach goes l'tera is that it is kodesh, and l'chera the liyos kodesh is to be noyeg with it as if it's kodesh. Is a whole different story. And that's the Ram brings the Matik Yashmur, that's a Lavandik Laseh, he's supposed to do something. It means to be noig with it as if it's Kodesh. And that's what a priori, according to this whole discussion, that it's a bitcoin and the mitzvah is that it should be in the matzav. It clearly, the chinuch learns like this. The chinuch in mitzvah shin nun beis, she titzave oisanu hatera liyos hatmura Kedosha V'linhoig Kodesh B'shtehen. He just happens to be shtei. We'll see about that. But the mitzvah is to be noig with it as Kodesh. The Ram Shita is that the mitzvah is only on the Tmura. Liyos hatmura Kodesh. Not the behemas chul and sheheme bo, and the minyan hakotza also. Liyos hatmura kodesh, shenebo hoyehu smosi kodesh, and the Porta Mitzvah also. Shetia hatmura kodesh im hemer. However, the chinuch says that the mitzvah is on both in Shin and Beis, as we read before. Liyos hatmur kodesh kleima hameime behemas korbonoi bebehema acheres kagoin shiomer zo tiel korbon tmur zei shetiena zehi vatmur shteim kodesh shnemo hoyu smos yeh kodesh. וזה הכוסף מצלסהו, כלומר שתצווה אויסנו התורה, להיות התמורה קדושה ולנו קודש בשתיהן. Okay. Then let's go over the line. He said, ושום נאמר, גם כן בתם היוס הממר לא יגה, שהוא לאו הניתק לעשה, אומו לא יעשה עשה ואוכל שתי לאווים, because, see, the fact that you לא יגה, you should say fakert. The achros chazal is that it's not nitik lasei, and the achros chazal is v'hoyu smosi kodesh is only pak goes latera, and therefore you like it. So that's what the Ram says. It's not like that because you look carefully at the Gemara, because the Gemara says lo yasi asei v'dochi trei lave or v'benatik trei lave. Because on Aseh cannot be menatik to lav. That's the whole discussion. Okay, next. Now, this is not that much negate to us. It's just a idea. L'osi aseh v'oka trei lave. You see, in minyan mitzvahs, there are only one lav in minyan mitzvahs. Lo yachfer v'yom oisei. So what does it mean, the trei lave? The trei lave is nichpal. And that the Ram says, and shows chi, that it's a chumrah, it's a lav chomo. And this din of lav chomo expressed itself that the idea of lav and niklas doesn't apply to it. And aside, therefore the Briskulav says that the Gemara could say in Psachim that Bal Yiro Bayimotze is a lav nitalaseh. Because there it's two separate lav in minyan mitzvahs. It's not a nichpal. And the aseh is menatik each lav independently, and there's no lav chomo. Next. And that shows chi. The Ram says in shows chi the following: Omnon kishlo yeh shom inyan noisaf. There's no separate in lo yachlifenu v'lo yomi is one inyan in yatera. So in Mela, it's one lav minyan mitzvahs. So why was it nichpal? Da be'emesh lo nichpal ela lechizuk ukidei she Yivoda gam kein שזה האובן גדול מאוד. אחרי שבו בוי אסהור אח אסהור. And since it's גדול מאוד, therefore, the Aseh is not menatiket. And this discussion about Bal Yiro by Motze, as opposed to which is two separate lavim in mitzvahs, and it's not nich bal chumra. Biskrov talks about it in Tmur and Daf Beis and Aleph. The Rishonim in general, Tosis in the beginning of Chulin and Tmura, Tosa Rosh, the Beis and Chulin, Tmura, that Lo Yosei Aseh, Umenat the Kreilavim, that instead of getting 80, 40 and 40, you only get 40. It's only Menatic one of the two. If you learn like that, so there is no portion. There's a it's a nita class. It's menatic one of them. See, but the Ram learns that there's no nitach because the lav chomer, the Ram shita is there's only two malkis, only if it's two separate lavim in mina mitzvah. There's only one lav in mina mitzvah, it's only 40. So the whole discussion is about the Ram L'Shitasa. It's about Chuma Lav. Okay. Next. That is Tmur. Now, that was Pei Zion. Next. Pei Ches. HaMitzvos Hashmone Ushmonim. He shetzivonu hakohanim לאכול שירי מנחות. A separate mitzvah v'achila שירי מנחות. V'u omroi yis'ale והנותרת ממנו יאכלו אהרן ובניו מצות תאכל. A mitzvah say to eat the shoy menachos. Matzos and Viloshin Sefer. Matzos teochel mitzvah or teochel mitzvah. In Ksaviyat Kapach, it says Matzos Teochel. In Ksaviyat Aksvud, and Ibn Tibin, and Ibn Ayav, and all everyone else, it says Teochel Mitzvah. Now, Teochel mitzvah. So it means there's a mitzvah say. That's what he's bringing a raya. Ki oitze ba yevoma yovo leho mitzvah. So had I not had the end of the Teres Kohanim, you see, okay, maybe we'll do it the opposite. Well, let's see what he says, and then we'll. At the end of the Teres Kohanim, Yevoma Yovo Leo Mitzvah Rotzaloima. שאכילס שורי מנוחס כמו באילס היבומו, יבומו יבו עליהו, שהיא מצווה עשה, לא עניין heter levad. It's not a heter, but it's a mitzvah. Or the same way that Yevomo Yovo Yaleho is the mitzvah. Also, Achila Shorim Menochos is also a mitzvah. Or the Inyan, the Ibn Tibin is Inyan Heter, Levad, in Ibn Ayov Rishus, Lo Inyan Rishus, and Kapach Dovo Shel Rishus Belvad. It's not Rishus. But it's a mitzvah. Faiz bo dini mitzvah zo makom mesechus menochos v'lo shenatera she mitzvah zo miuchedes b'zechorim om yisale kol zocha b'nei Aaron yachleno. So, this whole idea that the achilas menachos should only be mishus I must say, is at least very odd. What's the issue over here? So you see, the problem, the Ram quotes the Teres Kohanim out of context because he's not interested in the context. He's interested in the word of mitzvah, and he wants to prove the mitzvah minyan on mitzvah. Let's just see the context and see what's happened over here. Matzahs te'ochel mitzvah lefi shehoysa b'chlal heter lifnei hektish hamincha v'nesra when you made a kodesh, when you made the minyan makdish the mincha v'chozer v'hutra after akrovas hakometz yochol tarzo leteiro rishon shakol mutom b'achila tamaloi mamatzos teochel. It's not just a heter, but there's a mitzvah. Ukiyetze bo b'yavo mayovo leho mitzvah lefi shehoyisa b'chlal heter liyovom lifnei she'achiv kitcha, before the brother married this, the Yavomo, the brother who passed away before he married her, she was mutter to him, to the other brother. V'nesra to she'achiv le'achiv, when he married her, it's the eshes achiv, and she was nesra. V'chozer v'hutra with the misas achiv, the chamatir, that the isa of eshes ach yochol tarzel eteo rishon. It's only a heter liyabem, but there's no mitzvah. Talmuloimo yevomo yovoleo shayova mitzvah liyabem isa. Similarly, is a mitzvah of achilas shorim menochos. So that's what it says. In other words, that they did, that when the Torah says matzos teochel, it's not a het of achilas shorim menochos, but it's a mitzvah, minyan mitzvahs. So the Malbim says an amazing thing. The Malbim says that the same way the Torah has the Lashon Yibum twice to come to tell you that it's not only a het that is a mitzvah, because it says, Yevomo yovo aleho ulakachta lo liisha v'yimama. Yevomo yovo aleho ulakachta lo liisha tzachmuta v'yimama. There's a mitzvah. Similarly, in Achilles Shori Menachos, it says Ya'khloo Aaron Uvonov in Vayikol Vov Tes, and the Torah goes here again. Vanoiseres mimeno Ya'khloo Aaron Uvonov. I'm sorry. It says Yochlo Isaun upon the bites. That should have been enough. But it says no, it says Yochlo upon the is a hete. Matzos teochel. It says a second time to tell you there's a mitzvah. So it means this is very serious. Now, just a little confused. Because, the same svara, and in Farnito, it's kind of like this. You could have said, by any behemoth chul in which you makdish it, and you would do zikas adam before it was mutter, maybe it's chos lehet rishonim, and maybe there's no mitzvah. Chais. I'm not sure what exactly happened here. And even more than that, the Ram says in Shirish Yud Beis that the mitzvah of Achilas Kochim is a separate mitzvah, minyan mitzvahs, and not part of the Seder of Achilas Shlomim or Achilas Chatos or Achilas of Asham, is because it's noig in all Kochim. So, one would have said that Achilles Shalom Menachos is not noig in all Kochim, it's only in Mincha. So with that logic, it should be part of the Seder of Mincha, which is Mitzvah Samach Zayin, the Maisa Mincha. And it shouldn't have been a separate mitzvah. So, what? You can learn two things from this? That not only it's not a het, it's a mitzvah, but since you use the Lashon mitzvah and it compares it to Yibum, it's a raya doch, then it's a separate mitzvah. That's very odd, to say the least. In other words, it's mistaba like that. What he says, that's what he says, it shows your base, that it's by all korbanos. The achila, therefore, it's a separate mitzvah. But that's all in korban. In mincha, I don't know. I say that it's a separate. Okay, next. We have interpreted the Sefer according to the Rambam that there's a mitzvah of achil menachos. But pashtus of the Gemara in Yevomis and Memam and Aleph, which is explaining the Sefer, it's a completely different pshat in the Sefer. The mitzvah is on the kohen hamakriv laechol mishorim menachos, as opposed to other kohanim. Tosis amemam and aleph tivamascho rotza kohen acher oichlo. But the Rambam is not explaining the Sefer according to the Gemara. And the Rambam Mishnah Torah, the amazing thing, doesn't quote the halacha, which is in the Gemara, that the kohen hamakriv should eat it. But the Rishonim on the Sefer, the Raivin and Rabbeinu Hillel, are learning the Sefer according to the Gemara. The Sefer is saying something else. You have to explain. It's not our issue now. What's the capacity Yibum, whatever it is. But the Ram is a different shot, and the upshot of the Gemara that there's a separate mitzvah on the kohen makriv is the Ram doesn't have, and that's the issue in the Gemara. Now, let's talk a little bit more about this issue. The Rambam, the next mitzvah just before, the next mitzvah is the mitzvah of achilas, chatas, and asham. A mitzvah hatesha u'shmonim, hishetziva akohanim, lechol bosa akadoshim. Kloima. Hachatas vaasham shein kodesh kadoshim. Yisal v'achlo isom asher kupa b'hem. So what you have is mitzvah peches is the mitzvah of achilas shoy mincha, and mitzvah petes is achilas chatas vaasham. In Shiur Beis, let's go again. V'zeu asiba, ki hamalochi hi hamitzvah, ve'in lo elimnois boi kol chelik v'chelik mechalki hamalocha. You shouldn't count the shchita, the zrike, the haktorah, a separate mitzvah. It's all one mitzvah of the kovasai. Whatever each different call. Elo im heim tzivuyim koilim. However, if it's not chelke hakrova, but it's a mitzvah which applies to all korbanos, koilim mine korbanos kulam, lo yisyachdenu, lo yisyachdu. B'min zulas zehamin, if it's in all korbanos, oz roi shimone kol tzivui mehem lemitzvah b'fnei atzma lefi she'eino oz. If it applies to all korbanos, it's not chelkei mitzvah. She'ein oz, she'eino oz chelek mechelkei meleches hakorban me'akorbanos. Kumai hisiu mehakriv balmum. Balmum applies to all korbanos. Oh, tzavosei shi'etomim. The in tom applies to all korbanos. V'tzavois Shiur bilti mechus zman. It applies to all korbanos. V'om yisal mimashmini v'holo. V'tzavois Shimlach kol korban. V'om al kol korbon chatat melech. V'zhiu mehashbisai to lahashbis melech from the korban. Shelo tashbis melech. So there's a the lav, since it applies to all korban, it's not chelke. HaMitzvos. V'tzavoisei le'echol ma sheyochel mimenu. Then he adds achilas kol korbanos. Shekol echod me'elu hatzivuyim hi mitzvah bifnei atzmo ki heim ein mehem gam echod chelik mechalkei mitzvah. It's not chalkei mitzvah. It's mikol malachas hakorban b'miyuchad. Avol tzivuyim kol and kol korban kmo shenivaya b'manois oisa. So the two klolim in Shirishid Beis. The mitzvahs are klolios, l'chol minei korbanos. Those which apply to the whole slew korbanos are counted separately as separate mitzvahs. And that's the Sefer. There should be a mitzvah of achilas kol korbanos. And the Ram counts. There's no mitzvah of achilas kol korbanos because the Ram limits it to chattas and asham. And l'chayr should have included shlomim. It's like Rashi in Talmud Nishchat. L'chayr the Ram in Shirish Beis is like Rashi in Talmud Nishchat. That there's v'achol shel kupa b'hem includes achilas shlomim. And the Ram counts two separate mitzvahs of achilas korbanos, achilas shoyim menachos, and achilas chattas v'asham. V'achol shel kupa b'hem, and mitzvah peites. Achilas kodesh kodashim. So l'chera in minyan mitzvahs, he's cholik on what he says in the shoshim. So once you have the klal and Shirish Beis, the chelke mitzvah are not counted separately, but all the chalokim are part of the broader mitzvah of chatos or asham or whatever it is. So achilas korbanos should have been under the mitzvah of Maisa Chatos and Maisa Asham, and the Chayisham and Achais should have the mitzvah of the Maisa Mincha. Look, Veira, if you read the Pasha of Menachos, one would have assumed that the Achilas HaMincha is part of Akrova. It says in Vayikov from Posik Zayin through Posik Tes, V'zeis Teres HaMincha, הקריבויס בני אהרן לפני השם, אל פני המזבח, והעיר ממנו בקומסוי מסולס המנחו משמנו, ויעש כל הלבוינו אשר על המנחו, והקטיר המזבחו ריח ניחויך אז כוסו השם. והנותרת ממנו יאכלו אהרן ובניו מצות תאכל מוכן קודש כסל מועד יאכלו. So it's part of the Seder of the teres hamincha, not all the teres hamincha, that's the mitzvah. So you would assume that the achil is part of that mitzvah. So you have both problems. The problem number one, that the Rambam l'chera, in terms of the mitzvah of achilas kochim, the Rambam, it's not by all kabbalah, it's only by chattas and asham. So it should be part of the ma'aseh chattas and asham. And the same way in mincha, it should be part of the seder hakovas and mincha b'frat. In the parsha, v'zeis teres hamincha is part of the parsha of zeis teres hamincha. So, l'chera, what's happening over here is an amazing thing. The havamina of the Sefer is very odd. It's a heter. Oh, Yibum should have been a heter. And the answer is no, it's not a heter. Aber steht in Teres Kohanim, that is doch a mitzvah. And the fact that the Matiki Ashmur call it a mitzvah is a raya doch that it's a mitzvah in the minyan. And even though you would have said that it's chalkei mitzvah comes the Matiki Ashmur and says in this case it's not so. So then there's an amazing thing. The Rambam ostensibly is bringing the Sefer for X, but there is another purpose for Y, because even though you would have said that it's not, it's only a heter, Kamashro, it's a mitzvah, but maybe it should be part of the mitzvah of Teres HaMincha, should be part of Samar Zion. So since the Lashon of the Sefer is matzahs te'ochel mitzvah, so it's a separate mitzvah, minyan mitzvahs. An amazing thing. So at the moment, and that's really all that's necessary for us, all we know now is we understand why Achilas Shoim and Ochais should have been, even though it should have been part of the Seder of Akrobas HaMincha, the answer is, since the Teres Kohanim says mitzvah, it's a separate mitzvah. And even though the Teres Kohanim has come from something else, it's an amazing thing. Now, next in the Sefer, in Parsha Beis, Piska Yud Aleph, Lefi shenemo yochlua, ein li elokula, minayin afilu mixosa, talmud loy meteochel, afilu kolshu. Aye, what do you mean, Talmud? Every mitzachila is always not pchus mikzayis. It is true. Let's see now. The Beis Halevi says that nachilus lechem aponim v'chulei. There's a mitzvah in chefsa. And the chet should be nechal kohanim. This is, so you would have said that according to the Sefer, it applies to mincha also. One has to think, in the key with chefsa, is that enough to be a separate mitzvah? Or should be part of the mitzvah menachos? Secondly, just for edification, the Rambam does not quote this din of Pochas Migzais, and as far as the Rambam is concerned, I don't know what happens here, but he doesn't quote it. Now, 1 second. The Rambam in Mitzvah Samach Zayin doesn't quote Achilas HaMincha, and the reason is because the Rambam's interested in the Chelkei Mitzvah, and Achila is not Chelkei Mitzvah according to this because it's a separate mitzvah. Interesting, in the mitzvah lechem aponim, in mitzvah Aseh Chav Zayin, and the mitzvah minchas oime, in mitzvah say mem dalid, and mitzvah of shtei lechem upon the Ram writes that achilas kohanim is chelik of the mitzvah. And by shtei lechem and lechem aponim, not by minchas oime. The Ram doesn't like that. Because lechem upon them, shtei lechem. And lechem upon him, and shtei lechem, the kohanim eat the whole mincha. There's no chelik, it's not nikraf. And there, it's not included in the mitzvah of Shiur Menachos. The mitzvah of Shiur Menachos is when there's a chelik with nikraf. In minchas oime, it's the nikraf, so it's b'chlal this mitzvah. But in Shiur, but in lechem aponim and in shtei lechem, where it's not nikraf, it's part of this mitzvah. You see, basically, it's part of the mitzvah lechem aponim and shtei lechem. But in minchas oimer, it's part of this mitzvah of achilas Shiur Menachos. So Mitzvah Hashem, next time we'll take up mitzvah Peites, the mitzvah of Achilas Chatos and Asham.